I think we're streaming now. Can't guarantee anything because I never can. Yep, we are receiving content. Aloha, Manga Club. It's your boy Lohali here with one of the all-time favorite guests on the Manga Club, and that is Simply G. Today, we are going to be talking about the target demographic of a manga versus the actual demographic of a manga. So just quick primer, G. Give us a quick overview of who you are. If you don't know who G is, I'm almost disappointed in you.
Well, thank you. Hey everyone, I am G from the channel SimplyGee. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about anime, manga, show off my pickups. You can also find me on Twitter at CollectingG, where I'm on fairly regularly, and otherwise I can be found in various locations online, but generally those two places you will definitely be able to find me, and I'm really happy to be on the I guess live stream again and talking about this topic. I think it's going to be an interesting one.
It's always an interesting topic with you, G, because as I said before the live stream, you do write out some of the most thoughtful responses that I receive on my videos. They are almost, if they weren't an MLA 12-point font style for colleges and all of that, I would be thoroughly disheartened. Even on the last live stream, we got into some murky waters that we weren't quite sure about, and you called us out on that after you rewatched the whole thing, and I appreciate it, because if we didn't have you keeping us honest, who would? And as always, I am joined by my trusty co-host, the amazing, the wonderful Jing Graves. Say hey, Graves.
What's up, guys?
And you know what we're talking about today, don't you, Graves?
Yeah, we talked about it like 5 minutes ago.
Perfect. I'm glad that you remember, because I certainly never do. So, like I said, when I was coming up with a topic to discuss with G this time, there's something that we've brought up before, not necessarily talked about in depth, but that is the idea of the demographic of manga. Who is the intended consumer for not just different genres, but for manga in general? And today I kind of want to get G's opinion, ideas, just on this topic. So let's start off with a broad overview for what a target demographic or a target audience is. And G, what would your definition of that be?
Well, a target demographic is obviously who the work is written for. That doesn't exclusively mean it is only for that person, which I think we'll discuss more in depth later in this live stream, but it is really the person or the group of people that the work is aimed towards, and so it will be there and written to accommodate their expectations. In regards to manga, we generally see these classified as things like shonen, shoujo, josei, seinen, and then other like subgenres like yuri and BL as well. Not so much, it's a different thing from a genre, which is what an actual setting is, or like the theming of a book, whether that be horror, romance, whatever else. But I do think that from the West, there is a very strong correlation in regards to genre and audience versus demographic versus audience. So yes, that's sort of my perspective on it from like a outside of Japan fan of this medium.
And that's, again, you always describe it better than I could, which I need you to like follow me around so when I'm at work you can describe the thoughts in my head to my bosses so it's much clearer. Graves, do you have anything to add to that thought about what a target demographic is, what a target audience is?
No, she covered it.
So I noticed how you said when you were at the very end, you said at least this is from a Western audience, a Western consumer's point of view. Do you understand the point of view from somebody who would be coming from, that culture, the Japan, I don't necessarily want to say all of Asia, but Korea, where manga, manhwa are really popular and where they're being made? Is there a difference in the target demographic idea?
I mean, I can't speak to the obviously mentality of because I have never lived there for an extended period. I've visited both of those countries, Korea and Japan, but I've been nothing more than a tourist. But I would say that a lot of the things that certain Western fans deem as certain demographics don't have nearly the prejudice against them in Japan. I think that people are a lot more aware that there is various manga for all types, and that it's not such a rigid structure of like everything is only for this group of people. So I would say that there is a little bit, because it is such an established part of Japanese culture now, and it is such a widespread, form of media there. It's not really something, unlike in the West, where it's much more of a niche. There isn't really a lot of stigma attached to certain types of titles either. So that lends it a lot more flexibility and a lot more acceptance than certain titles may find outside of Japan.
Interesting. Like I said, that's not something that I really have all that much experience with, because I'm obviously coming from a very, very small perspective on the target demographic for, manga, for anime. Coming from the Midwest of the United States, from a small town, I was told, I didn't find out for myself, I was told that manga was for specifically nerds and dorks. That was it. And so growing up, that's what I always thought of manga as, something that was geared towards one specific crowd. But gaining a larger perspective on the stories, I've started to realize that they are, like you said, for different, there's a ton of different subsets, a ton of different genres that can fall into each of these target audience ideas. And just because something is a shonen does not necessarily mean that a specific shonen can't be aimed towards a different demographic than what would normally be expected. Hey, Smokey. Smokey has appeared, everybody.
What? A wild Smokey has appeared. Go Pokeball.
Tried. He doesn't like that. So Graves, what about you? Growing up, was there an idea of what manga was in general was aimed towards?
I mean, usually you were like, everybody thought you had like a darker side. Usually, like you were some kind of like a closet pervert or something like that, or you were associated with a bad crowd, and that kind of went away pretty fast, because then people were like, oh well, it's like a comic book, okay. But I feel like more kind of like with my nephew and whatnot, one of their friends was like, oh, I can't remember the word. They didn't call me an otaku. They called me something else. Yeah, something like that. And they're like that. And I was like, that sounds a lot more derogatory than saying I'm an otaku. So,
which is kind of weird. I mean, otaku in Japan, if I remember properly, because I'm definitely not Googling it to get the answer. Otaku is literally somebody who's obsessed with computers or particular aspects of culture, popular culture, to the detriment of their social skills. Whereas weeb, aka weeaboo, is they're not Japanese, but they wish that they, hey Smokey, wish that they were. Which is interesting. Hey bud. He's made his appearance. G, do you think that either of those terms are a good idea for, manga lovers to use in describing themselves? Or are they even accurate?
I those two were, it's an interesting culture behind it, because obviously otaku in Japan is a very negative thing. You don't really want to be classified by other people as an otaku. And otaku isn't just related to anime and manga. It can be, you know, you can be a train otaku, you can be really into like certain stage shows, things like that. It's just the very obsessive type of fan, which, as you said in your definition, to the detriment of their social life. Whereas from the Western perspective, I think a lot of anime and manga fans have kind of reclaimed that term in order to describe themselves. I actually really enjoy the self-deprecation of weeb. I think that there are very small, or sometimes very large, sections of Western fandom that can be classified as weebs. You usually find them at like 14 years old. They think Japan is the greatest country that's ever existed. They don't really have any critical thinking skills as of yet. So they just are very attached to this foreign country that they've never been to. And of course, it's the setting of their favorite series. So it's just like this magical place on the other side of the world. So those are like the serious weebs that I think other people, other anime fans, definitely have a very, you know, unhappy or negative opinion about. But I think also those same fans, not the ones we're unhappy about, but the ones who are very critical, can use weeb as a term to like make fun of yourself. And so like I use it, weeb, a lot. I'm like, oh, we're to my sister, I'm like, oh yeah, we're such dumb weebs. But it's not meant to be like in a very, as I said, it's sort of self-derogatory. It's more so poking fun at yourself, which I think you need to be able to do to have like a healthy relationship with your hobbies anyway, and with your life and your interests. But that's just my experience with those. I don't particularly like the word otaku used for myself, because I find it just a bit, I don't know, seems a little clumsy, and it doesn't really work to how I see myself. I wouldn't really call myself either of those words seriously. I'd just say I'm a fan of something. But that, again, that's just me.
And I think that's a lot of it is it's just, you know, what you're comfortable calling yourself is a great thing. And I think that applying a label, like, especially with those two definitions, applying that label to somebody in a serious manner when it's not joking, like you, Otaku Mike, could be used, right, you know, especially with that context of how it's viewed in Japan, could be viewed as a very negative thing. And that would, you know, from my point of view, as most things that come out of my mouth are, it can be a very divisive thing where you see people, larger YouTubers like, you know, Giguk, the Anime Man, you know, they'll refer to themselves randomly as, you know, oh, I'm a huge otaku, or, you know, I'm a weeb, or they'll just call themselves a straight up nerd. But they also, if I've noticed, and this is, I don't watch their videos too in depth, but they don't call other people that unless it's somebody who's called themselves that before. It's something that I've never actually paid attention to until you just pointed it out, G.
Right.
I mean, I know that I classify myself as a nerd.
Which, it's funny that you and your sister call each other weebs sometime. Me and my brother kind of have that. We'll, if it's one of those days where you're not leaving the house or whatever, we'll use hikikomori towards each other, and he'll be like, man, today I was just being a hikikomori. I said, you're always a hikikomori. So he just,
I mean, it's not like you're calling yourself a NEET. That would just be strange, because that's no education, employment, or training, I believe.
Yes.
That's horrible.
It is. But that's, whenever you see, usually the definition for a NEET is the guys that you see sitting in their rooms underneath the blankets with the video games, chips all over, and the 5 o'clock shadow.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's kind of what a hikikomori is.
See, there you go.
Well, actually, bringing that back to sort of the topic at hand, yeah, I think a lot of media, especially anime, is very much appealing to that demographic of this lost generation of like the millennial NEET who aren't in education, don't have employment, or aren't in training. And you see it a lot, especially with isekai stuff, of this glorification of like NEET status and the fact that your heroes are these people who in reality are kind of bums, like they don't have much going on in their lives, but they are very often classified as this hero to the story who can, you know, save everything or gets thrown into the plot line. And so you do see, I mean, it goes hand in hand with this appealing to a particular demographic, and you are seeing it more and more merge itself into this otaku culture, because I do think that you know, the fanatic type of fan who are so involved with their hobbies but not so much the rest of their lives and don't really feel a responsibility to do anything else is very prevalent, especially in places like Japan, where there is such a hikikomori crisis or a NEET crisis that they're facing right now. So it's I don't particularly like those types of stories, because I find those sorts of characters very wish fulfilling, and I myself am not within that particular demographic, thankfully. So it does, even things like I can't remember the name of the show. It's like a mystery show. It came out a couple of years ago where the detective, the girl, is a NEET, and that's sort of seen as like she's this genius. She can do anything, she can solve anything, but all of her people who works for her are NEETs. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, but this is not what these people are actually doing. We know that's not what they're doing.
Oh, is that Heaven's Memo Pad?
Yes, that is correct. Heaven's Memo Pad.
Dun, dun, dun.
I got them Google fingers, everybody. I got them Google fingers.
But even things like ReZero, I'm not that familiar with that show, but I'm fairly certain the protagonist of that, in his life before entering another world, he was just kind of a loser, and that seems to be the trend within isekai currently. So yes. Anyway, continue on. Sorry.
No, that was perfect. Yeah. So I mean, that's a subgenre. You know, that's a demographic. You know, the wish fulfillment. You know, a demographic isn't just an age group. It isn't just an identity. You know, it's not just a sexual identity that a lot of people commonly associate it as. A lot of it can be a mindset or a status in life. You know, aiming it towards the wish fulfillment, aiming it towards those wanting to live vicariously, live happily vicariously through somebody else. That's another example of a demographic and a target, which I'm ecstatic that you brought that up, because this kind of brings up another kind of, I guess, really I'm stumbling over my words, G. How do you do it? Really, the first demographic that a lot of people think about when they think of manga is that age and gender demographic. That very all-important, all-encompassing. Is this aimed at young males, young women, older males, older women? Who is this aimed at? And, you mentioned it earlier. You have shonen, shoujo, seinen. You have all of those aimed at supposedly a different crowd, but who's actually reading those is kind of an interesting thought. And G, I know that you don't hesitate to tell me your thoughts on that. Do you think that having manga separated into these subcategories currently is a good idea, especially considering where we're at now culturally in the world, socially, where we don't see gender as much as we see, gender identity is more of a question now than it has been in the past. So saying that this story is specifically aimed at 13 to 16-year-old boys might be a limiting factor for a story that a girl might really like.
I want to jump in on this.
No, go ahead, Jen.
So this is another thing going with that I actually thought earlier is, just like the poster behind you, I mean, were we never supposed to finish like those stories? Were we never supposed to finish Bleach or Naruto or One Piece? Because going off of it being a shonen and us starting out as that target demographic and everything, you know, obviously with it running 10 plus years or so, were we never supposed to finish that series or whatever because that's what we started with? We would have grown out of that age bracket by that time.
It's very true. Like One Piece, started reading when I was like 8 to 10. I am 25 now. Definitely far outside the target demographic. Very far outside.
I think for a lot of the, especially long running shonen, because you don't see a huge amount of like long running shoujo, you're supposed to, they adapt themselves to be able to be appropriate and approachable for new readers, but at the same time, it does have the expectation of the reader growing up with those characters. Obviously, there's a time skip in One Piece. Not that I haven't read it, so I can't, speak to it, but I would feel that quite emblematic to like this continuation or this growth of characters over the course of the series. Harry Potter, I know you're a big fan of Lohali, is another really great example of that because book 1 to book 7, those characters are at very different points in their lives, and they act in very different ways, and that is done with the expectation of the fans. The first fans from the earliest work are following it up until the end point, and I think some series is more obvious of this transition from like very all ages kind of, I guess, welcoming type of stories to more mature stuff as it goes on. Really good example of that is any of Togashi's series, but most notably Yu Yu Hakusho. Hunter x Hunter has always had a bit of an edge from day one, but the early arcs are very much more in line with standard shonen, where comparatively Chimera Ant arc was like completely different. I don't necessarily know how many 12-year-old boys would have the mental comprehension to fully get every theme within that arc that is trying to be shared. Not to say that 12-year-old boys are dumb, but I don't think that it's unheard of to think that Togashi is pushing the envelope a little bit with that series, and with Yu Yu Hakusho, and with a lot of his other series.
I do want to interrupt. Speaking from somebody who was a 12-year-old boy, we were not that intelligent. Anyway, back to G. Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, you see it all the time, and it's very, very rare that you do have series like, especially One Piece, that's been running for 20 years now. It's been a long, long time, and there are, of course, other series that have, what's the other one? JoJo is a perfect example of this, but even JoJo, you can see the evolution of like how the story has been told over these last 30 years. Whereas a lot of the other shonen stuff, even stuff like Naruto and Bleach and that, really capped off at 10 to 15 years. Fullmetal Alchemist was only a 10-year running series, which is a long time, but consequently, like within life, a decade's not a huge amount of time. Hopefully we get to at least 7 or 8 of those. So, and usually, you don't start something from day one, aside from the artist, aside from the creator, they're there from day one, but a lot of people aren't. So it is this thing where I think for a lot of shonen especially, and shoujo, you start off easy, you introduce these younger people to your series, and then as you go, you can adapt and change it and maybe cover some things that are a little bit more mature and a little bit more complex as you go on. And that's not an unreasonable thing to expect.
That's very succinct. It's very true. Manga ages up as you go, and as we all know, the one who's done it the best is hands down Kubo Type, because as I got older, his artwork got simpler, and it aged up with me. There's definitely not any sarcasm in there, everybody. So that addresses kind of the age idea. So what about the gender question? You know, should we?
Well, go ahead.
Should
Finish your thought.
And it's not so much a thought as it is a question. You know, we have, you know, shonen, shoujo, seinen, and if I am correct, redisu. I'm not the greatest with the non-shonen words here.
I'm not familiar with redisu, but I'd say josei is probably the
josei.
most.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's, again, Google has failed me at one point in time. So
I really want to know
josei.
what that word means now.
Google, man. So is splitting it up in that kind of idea, you know, split straight down the gender lines, especially, like I said, in the current socio-political climate, is that helping or hindering the possibility of different series growth potential?
I would say in the West, absolutely. I think that splitting series into gender divided demographics serves a purpose. I think it allows you to have expectations for the work. So if you are going into a shoujo, even if it is like a fantasy setting or, you know, mystery, crime thriller, you can expect that there will probably be a romantic interest. There will probably be a lot of focus on this more emotional development of the characters rather than necessarily like just large plot action sequences that a lot of shonen focuses on. But I don't fundamentally think that, you know, boys won't be able to enjoy a shoujo. And I think more so you see this in the West a lot, is that if you have a shoujo label on something, guys won't try it. And I think that's really a disservice to a lot of series, because one of my absolute favorite series is Natsume's Book of Friends. It's a very like all ages type of manga in Japan. It's one of the best-selling shoujo manga around. It has currently 6 seasons of anime and at least 3 OVAs and a film that just came out late last year. It's an incredibly popular franchise. We have 22 volumes available in English, but it's not one that I see a lot of people talk about. And it's one of those like magical shoujo that people don't exist, where it doesn't have any romance. It's really not focused on that. It's more so like a character drama and exploration with a supernatural twist on it. And it's one that in Japan people are reading from the ages of 9 to 99. It's one that everybody seems to love and has a lot of respect for, and is, as I said, very popular. You don't get 6 seasons of anime being an unpopular series. But in the West, it doesn't have that same amount of people trying it, because it is published under Viz's Shoujo Beat imprint, which if it was published as just like a Viz title, like any of their other series, like that Requiem of the Rose King is currently, that's a shoujo manga, but it's not published under the Shoujo Beat imprint. So I think a lot more people try it because people see shoujo, they think girls, they think pink and bubbles and romance and high school, and that's all it is. And that's really not what it is. As I said, demographic is very different from genre. And I always have beef with people automatically assuming that romance equals shoujo, because that is not the case whatsoever. But, you know, I do... Like, I don't really read I do read a lot of shonen, but I don't really collect a lot of shonen because it's not really that engaging to me, because I know what to expect with a shonen. Shonen is like an upbeat main character. He's got an adventure. He's got a goal he wants to do, and he's working towards that goal. And you fight people along the way, and sometimes the power of friendship is involved. And at the end of the day, you achieve the thing. That's what you expect when you go into shonen, and generally, that's what's given to you. And it doesn't really matter what the genre is, whether that's cyberpunk, whether that's fantasy, whether that's just martial arts, whatever. It all has the same beats. And I think that's why the genre or the gender split, as I said, does have its purpose, because you can sort of expect certain things, certain tropes especially, but it doesn't inherently mean, as I said, that that title is only for those people. And of course, you know, within genres or within demographics, you do have creators who are pushing that or challenging those tropes as well. So, you know, it's a bit of a complicated one, and I don't like saying that, you know, it's necessary for there to be this gender divide. But the reality of it is that when you do have this gender divide in any media, that there will always be a positive bias towards stuff for boys, not so much stuff for girls. Case in point is, like, even looking at popular media, superhero films are the thing. And initially, superheroes were always seen as like a boys' media. Most heroes, or like a good chunk of heroes, are men, and again, appealing to this power fantasy, etc. You're not going to have a huge amount of young boys choose the latest Disney princess film over the latest Captain America film. It just doesn't, but at the same time, a lot of girls will see both, or they will go to the Captain America film because that's what their brother wants to see, and the parents are only paying for one movie, damn it. So it's this complicated thing, but I think you as an individual have to be more aware of where your biases are, because it's this sort of unconscious bias that is pushed to the forefront, where shonen media is king. It's the one that has broad appeal. It's what everyone starts with. Even I started with a shonen. It was not the most it was Death Note, so it's not like the most generic of shonens, but a lot of people start with Bleach or Naruto, or currently My Hero Academia, things like that. And, you know, regardless of whether you're male or female, people enjoy that. And I think that regardless of if you're male or female, there's a lot of shoujo manga that people can enjoy. My Love Story is a really one that was really popular because of that. But people don't give it the chance, and it doesn't have the same level of funding. It doesn't have the same level of popularity, of push, of support, and that's the same in Japan as well as here. But I think it is even more obvious here, because I'm exposed to it more so here. So I can't, as I said, I can't really speak to the Japanese market, but you can even see, like in shoujo anime, the amount of funding that's put towards that comparatively to, you know, the most recent shonen anime is vastly different. You can compare stuff like My Hero Academia to the upcoming Fruit Basket, and you will see a difference just in how much money they're being allocated per episode. Anywho.
I enjoyed that off branch. That was a good one. I appreciated that. Graves, what do you think? Do you think that, you know, splitting manga up by, you know, genre like that, in your opinion, is it helpful or hurtful?
I think both. Yeah. I think part of it is that way. I just was thinking that you brought up Natsume's Book of Friends, and I just got that this week.
All of them?
So, yes, I'm waiting on volume 14. That's it. But yes, I did get 1 through 22. So
sans 14.
Right. But I mean, yeah, I think that that's true. You know, there are a lot of things that, even with our certain genres, like horror is more seen as something that is for boys and just other stuff, and then it spilled over. I mean, through the ages, some of the genres, but I feel like how we title some of it is seen as a particular demographic than what it should be. I mean, I haven't read Natsume's Book of Friends yet, but I've read My Love Story, and it's better than most shonen I've read. But it's considered a shoujo and all that other stuff. So I just feel like it's kind of weird how that is. But going off of that, I started with a shoujo. I think you told me it was a shoujo, Lohali.
Don't quote me on that one. I did not say that.
Is it?
No, G.
Did you say Inuyasha was a shoujo?
G told us we were wrong. G informed us we were wrong last time. I think that we
I
brought
can't
this
remember.
Tell me. What series is that?
Inuyasha.
Yeah, Inuyasha is a shonen.
Ha.
Oh, okay.
Rumiko Takahashi is a shonen mangaka. All of her stuff is shonen.
Okay.
See,
all of her stuff is shonen.
I remember this conversation. We had this conversation, and I think it was G who told us that we were wrong in thinking that it was shoujo. It was just one of those weird, like, I think that's one of the, like, shonen that was super popular with girls, which was not what I was expecting when I was younger, which is why I always associate it with shoujo.
Hey.
So I apologize, guys. That's my mentality, screwing everything up.
Can I ask, like, was that perception just because there was a female protagonist, or was it because there was a romantic element to it?
Personally, for me, I think it was a combination of the two. Because as a boy, it's harder for me to put myself in the shoes of a girl and understand the particular problems that she's going through. So it didn't feel like that manga was aimed at me, along with the love story, which, again, I was like 12. Girls still made me get like the heebie-jeebies. I was worried that I was going to get cooties and things. All false, everybody. Cooties are false. Everyone knows it's the heebie-jeebies that you catch. But the combination of those two, along with the general idea, at least where I was at, from my friend group, that no boy ever watched Inuyasha. It was all girls all the time who watched it. Made me make that association in my mind. It's a love story. It was not being able to put myself in the shoes of the protagonist as accurately. Kagome, as much as I respect her, couldn't get where she was coming from sometimes.
What about in other cases of shonen with female protagonists, things like Soul Eater? That's hugely popular. That's an action shonen. And stuff like, one of the most popular weekly shonen jump series right now, The Promised Neverland. Emma is the main character of that. Do you have an issue with those sorts of series that don't really have that romantic element? Or is it, so you don't have any problem? Or is it that romance side that is your issue?
So, again, with those, I absolutely do not have an issue. I was genuinely surprised when I heard that The Promised Neverland was a shonen originally, when I found out what the premise was. And I thought it was going to be, like, more, like, seinen style, like, that more adult, I don't know why, just the way that the story's built feels more grown up, more thought-oriented than your typical shonen. It feels like it's almost the inheritor of Death Note in the way that it makes you think about how the story is going to progress, at least from my perspective. And what was the other one that you said? Soul Eater. Soul Eater. So I was kind of on the back end of Soul Eater. My roommate in college, community college, actually was going to get a Soul Eater tattoo. So I've always seen that one as a shonen. And again, I think part of it was, and this is something that I didn't actually think about until just this second, part of it might have even been the art style was something that I just wasn't used to. Because again, I was introduced to, Naruto, One Piece, Dragon Ball Z. They had a very distinct, very hard drawn style, whereas Inuyasha, at least when I was younger. Again, my opinion has changed. Has more of a softer drawing style, and that's just again personal preferences. I think the romance had a little bit to do with it, with me associating it with that shoujo, with aimed towards girls, than the female protagonist, really.
So in going off of that, what about what is your perception of shonen romance? Things like Nisekoi or Love Hina, or all of these titles that are, I mean, Nisekoi was in Weekly Shonen Jump, so it's obviously appealing to the same set of readers generally as the people reading Naruto and Haikyuu and My Hero Academia. We Never Learn is another one that's the rom-com that's currently in Weekly Shonen Jump. Why does romance have this perception of being for girls and for women as well? Because there's a lot of seinen romance out there as well. And a lot of seinen sort of like soothing manga as well, like Chi's Sweet Home, which is about a kitten. Why do people inherently think that male-oriented media is inherently dark and gritty and action-packed?
Do you want my conspiracy theory thought on this one, or do you? Because that's what I have. I think it was more so. I don't necessarily want to say. I think it's media masculinity. I think it's the fact that media has pushed this idea that one is for one thing and something is for another, and that as a male is what I've grown up with. Romance is for girls, even though I thoroughly enjoy ridiculous, over-the-top rom-coms. I love them to death. I don't do just pure romance. It's got to be a rom-com. But I think that realistically, the way that the media portrays these and pushes them out to the general consumer, to the general public, is what has really shaped the idea that romance is for girls, gritty, dark action is for guys. And that's something that as a society, I think we're moving further and further away from, and I think that we're starting to expand our horizons. And it's going to take a little bit of time. Like I said, hopefully Sydney can't hear me. I 100% love rom-coms. One of my favorite like Disney movies is Tangled. Like hands down, love Tangled. Love it to death. But I think it just comes down to the way that media pushes these thoughts and ideas into our head as a way for us to consume more and more. But that's getting into a much larger, much more conspiratorial topic.
Well, that's what academics or people mean when they talk about toxic masculinity within society. So I think that's perfectly jumping off of that point. Another one that I remember, and I want to bring up in regards to shonen romance that we spoke about last time I was on the live stream that you thought was a shoujo, was A Silent Voice, which is, that's not, but it is a romance story. It's a character drama, and that's not a rom-com at all, but apparently you adore that, or you really enjoyed it at least.
I think it part of that one was I think it wasn't the romance that spoke to me in that one. It was the other aspects of the story, the bullying, the like that's something that I haven't touched on too much in a lot of my videos. But if I'm Smokey, stop playing with things. With A Silent Voice, I really connected on an emotional level, just due to the subject matter of, again, just bullying and that kind of feeling that you have within yourself. Like I said, it's super hard to explain, and I don't want to go.
No, you're doing a good job, and I think that's that sort of emotional connection is very much what shoujo manga tries to do. It does have this emotional appeal to it that people don't really expect to relate to, and the ideas of bulliness and isolation and those sorts of things are very prevalent in a lot of shoujo manga. which is, and Natsume's Book of Friend, loneliness and isolation. Those are the two big things, and finding connections with other people. Having emotional resonance that's not inherently gendered, or it shouldn't be. And I think being relatable to people shouldn't be gendered. And I think, if people did give series like Natsume a try, they'd realize that there's not a huge amount that people don't connect to. I mean, Natsume's Book of Friends, that's a shoujo, as I said. The main character in that is male. A lot of his friends are male. There's one kind of two recurring female characters in that series. But that doesn't mean that it's not, a girl's manga. Yeah, so as I said, I personally don't find the gender divide is inherently inducive of certain genres, as you were saying. Like, obviously you had a very deep, like, emotional connection to what was in A Silent Voice in regard to those themes. And it's curious because, as I said, you see it a lot in a lot of different types of manga. Again, you mentioned before, like, horror is seen as, like, guys' manga. Junji Ito started in shoujo magazines. A lot of his stuff was published in shoujo magazines, especially his earlier work. But he's one of the horror giants, and people don't think of, like, creepy stuff as being published for those magazines and for those audiences. It's yeah, as I said, genre is not indicative of demographic. And I hate, like, I'm of the idea of, like, read whatever you want. Like, you don't worry about the demographic so much. Who cares? Because Western society obviously is hopefully going towards a much more accepting and open-minded consuming media. They don't really hopefully shouldn't just judge based off of the cover, but you do still have, I think, in some subsects, this divide and this perception of one versus the other. Anywho.
Yeah, and that's, again, always with the good points.
So I got a question on that for both of y'all. So do you think us being on that form of media, being able to push and sway certain series that might get bought more or anything like that, maybe not all of us are kind of doing our part on that to really push and make the demographic not really matter
in the YouTube community?
Yes.
Okay. I, like, for me, I sing the praises of all my favorite series, regardless of what sort of genre, what type of demographic, whatever. I don't differentiate, and a lot of the series I talk about tend to be, because they are more so my taste, tend to be things like Josei stuff that's coming out. Princess Jellyfish was a big one. Descending Stories is a huge one that a lot of people don't know about. But even seinen titles, things like a Bride Story, nobody knew about that until I feel like I started talking about it a lot more, because people talked about Vinland Saga, but not so much those other types of seinen stuff. And, as I said, I don't really differentiate. I say really good things about Haikyuu, but I don't feel I need to convince anyone to try Haikyuu or My Hero Academia. They're already doing that. It's more so when I get a new volume of, Natsume's Book of Friends or Silver Spoon, which is a shonen, but not the same type of action shonen that a lot of people are familiar with, or To Your Eternity, which is a seinen, but again, much more like emotionally grounded, but within a fantasy setting, and not really dark and gritty, more so than like absolutely heartbreaking. And Descending Stories, as I've mentioned countless times on my channel, which is probably one of the best character dramas I've ever read in any sort of media, ever experienced in any sort of media. It's truly a work of art, that series. And again, main male character doesn't really have the female perspective much, although that can be argued, depends on where you sit on it. But for me, like, I talk about the things I want more people to support and more people to discover. That demographic doesn't really play into it, but just because of my taste and because of who I am, it tends to be more so seinen and josei focused, as well as like a lot of the LGBT manga coming out currently. That's something I'm really talking a lot about because I'm very passionate about that. I'm not within the community at all, but I do think it's very important that people of all sorts talk about those series, things like My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness, My Brother's Husband, the upcoming Our Dreams at Dusk. All of those are fantastic series that a lot of people may not know about or talk about, and or they feel like they can't enjoy it because they're not necessarily like bisexual or gay or lesbian, whatever. Yeah, so that's why I do try to mention those more so, because they don't have the amount of people following them just generally. Anywho.
So we're gonna actually wrap this up within the next 10 minutes, 9 minutes, I guess. So I'll try to answer your question really quickly. Let's make sure that I remember it properly, Graves. Do you think that, as your question was basically, as a manga tuber community, could we do more to help break the demographic divide?
Yeah.
Okay.
That works.
I mean, succinctly, it's what I do. I succinctly sum things up in sentences with lots of S's, apparently. Yeah, I 100% think that as a manga tuber, as a YouTuber community, you know, just as enthusiasts and lovers of manga in general, that we could do a lot more to open up people's eyes. We are a lot of people's first, you know, when they're Googling something, when they're Googling series recommendations, when they're looking for things, our videos pop up, you know. We need to do our part in helping push these demographics and expanding the horizons of readers out there, because who knows what happens if there's a lonely 14-year-old boy who's never heard of one of the most popular animated movies in Japan, A Silent Voice. He's never heard of it. Well, great. He's got a chance to. And I wish somebody had shown me you know, some more of the laid-back rom-coms when I was younger, just because I think that's something that I would enjoy reading, and now I have to try to find them instead of, you know, organically looking for them. I'm gonna have to ask G what I'm supposed to read. That way I can jump into the rom-com world properly, because I do enjoy a good romance in a series. Like Hajime no Ippo does it wrong, Hinamaru Zumo does it right. I said it here first. Y'all need to understand that. Sorry, that was my little rant. G, do you have any final like closing thoughts, ideas that you kind of want to get off your chest?
No, I think I've said my piece. I think I've clarified pretty thoroughly my thoughts on this. But I do want to say, you know, I'm not the one to tell you what you should and shouldn't be reading. I don't think that anyone should be able to do that aside from yourself. And I don't think it's wrong for people to only enjoy shonen, josei, shoujo, whatever it is. I do hope that maybe you will open your mind and have like a little bit of a broader try of things. If you don't like them, that's absolutely fine. But I do think it's sometimes a bit important to understand where series come from, and maybe educate yourself on your favorite series a little bit, because by doing so, not only do you know more stuff about something you love, it'll give you a little bit of a deeper understanding on why that appeals to you. And maybe you might be able to find something within a different demographic that appeals to you in the same way. So yes, try things. But as I said, be happy with what you're reading. Don't really worry about what other people think. But it's important to have like a healthy mindset to these things and being able to go into them open-mindedly.
That's absolutely, like I said, my only job here on YouTube is to give my opinion on things. It's not to tell you how you should think. And if you think that my word is the 10 Commandments, final, whatever you want to call it, the final word, you're wrong. Probably go listen to G before you listen to me. Her opinion, she knows what she's talking about. She's amazing. She has a great collection, though Graves, I think, collection is much, much, much larger. I could be wrong, though.
No, absolutely much larger than mine.
I gotta make Graves blush every video. That's always my goal, and I think he's blushing right now.
Hey, I have to take your blush away, though.
Uh-oh.
So guys, I don't know if all you guys knew on Twitter or not, but there is a mail shipped poll on my Twitter of who you would ship me with. So we have like 15, 16 hours left on there. You want to go on and vote real quick? Right now, Bizarre Individual is winning by 1. Lohali is in second place. Otaku Mike and Flip Otaku are way, way behind. But
remember, a vote for Lohali is a vote for love. I do have like one final question from the comments, and it is, what is your favorite manga magazine, G? If you have
Harta.
Harta?
Yeah, it's a seinen magazine. It's where a bride story is published. It's where Hachume and the other one, the two little people, that fairy kind of people. They have a lot of really great series. We do see a lot of them in English, thankfully, but some not so much. So whenever a Harta series is licensed, I'm always really thrilled about it.
Was it Hikumi and Mikochi's?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
See, this man is a veritable encyclopedia of all manga. If it's not on a shelf, it's in his brain.
Hey, man. Hey, that is a great series. I highly recommend that to everybody.
So, we don't have any closing thoughts. So, Graves, what do you have coming up? What's exciting for you? What do people need to know about?
I don't know. More manga hauls?
More manga hauls. I mean,
that's about it.
What is your what's your catch up this month?
My catch up this month?
Yeah, is it sriracha flavored? Sorry, that was
not
a bad
really.
joke.
I mean, Spirit Circle's really the big one that I read last month.
All right. And where can everyone find you?
So, well, before we do that, so I put something in the comments, and Shay ended up getting it. Shay, I want you to know you're still here. I didn't lie about you getting a prize. So it's a little dark and it's a little feminine because it is a great series. But it is this ruby statue of a Beowulf Grimm.
I do want to admit one embarrassing thing, everybody. I always thought that Ruby was literally just RWBY and like red, white, blue, yellow. I did not know that Ruby was the actual name. So this has now cleared up so much confusion in my life. I apologize.
You know all the letters make everybody's name, right?
No, didn't know that. Like straight up.
Yeah, Ruby Wise, Blake, and I always forget the Y.
Yang or something.
That one.
I don't watch
there you go.
But...
I've never seen a single episode, so that's why I've always been like, it stands for red, white, blue, yellow. Cool, awesome. That's a weird show name, but okay. G,
Right.
what do you have coming?
Anyway,
yes, Graves.
Anyway, there were, I randomly am gonna start throwing stuff in comments on here in the Dadcast, you may win a prize, you may not win a prize. So, just little things when I go to the store, if I find it and it's pretty cheap or whatever, because obviously it was a treasure that I found, then there we go.
And then, G, what do you have coming up? Where can people find you? The usual thing.
Well, as I said at the beginning, I am G from the channel SimplyGee. You can find me here on YouTube. You can also find me in my Twitter, which is @collectinggee, obviously just all one word. That's always also linked in the description of all my videos. Coming up, I have probably my pickups video, which always comes out on the 15th. I do bi-monthly videos for that. And because I just talk way too much, as you guys know. But I also have a very special new type of video coming out later this month. Hopefully you guys will enjoy that. It's going to be very different, and it'll be more so anime focused than manga. But yeah, I hope you guys check it out once that comes out. And yeah, thank you again, Jin and Lohali, for always having me on and being such gracious hosts. I always enjoy coming on, and as I said, I do dominate the conversation, unfortunately. But thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next video, guys. Bye till then.
All right, and as always, guys, thank you so much for being here with us. This was an amazing live stream. G, I cannot describe how happy we are to have you on, just because of your knowledge base, and you make it so easy. All that I have to do is ask questions, and I got you going. So thank you again so much. Big announcement for next week. We are having a double live stream. We're having one live stream on the 10th with Base at 8 p.m. And then on the 13th, we're having a live stream with Yomu Yokai. It's going to be a great time. Come with us, because the week after, it's going to blow your mind. Not to mention, I have a video coming out on, obviously, this channel, which is going to be another manga collector tip, so stay with us. So everyone, new and old, welcome and welcome back. It's your boy Lohali, signing out.
Bye.